The crash in Sector 7, Jaren's ship wasn't supposed to fall from the sky like that. He had flown hundreds of missions across war zones, toxic planets, and deep space storms. But this time, something had gone wrong, terribly wrong. One moment, he was flying through clear skies. The next, the dashboard sparked and screamed with red lights. Engines roared like dying animals, and the ground came up fast. The crash wasn't gentle. Metal screamed, fire bloomed, and Jaren blacked out as the seat restraints snapped. When he woke up, his head throbbed and smoke filled the broken cockpit. He unbuckled himself and crawled out, coughing hard, his suit torn, his face scratched. What he saw outside made his breath catch. The landscape was quiet, too quiet. Tall red trees with glowing leaves stood still, like they were holding their breath. The sky above was greenish blue, with 2 moons hanging low. He had landed on an alien moon, Sector 7, according to his map. Then he heard them, footsteps, fast and light. He turned around, his hands raised, thinking maybe rescue teams had found him. But no, it wasn't human. 3 children stood there, staring at him. They were alien. Their skin was pale silver, their eyes huge and glowing violet. They had ridged foreheads and thin arms. But they weren't scared of him. They were curious and hungry. One of them stepped forward, licking her lips. "Meat," she whispered in a high voice. Jaren backed up, tripping over a piece of wreckage. "Whoa, hold on, I'm not food," he said, even though he knew they couldn't understand him. A shadow moved behind them. Then a tall figure appeared, graceful but strong. A woman, alien too, but older, sharper, with long black hair braided with bones. She looked at him like he was a puzzle, a threat, and something else, something she hadn't seen in a long time. "Don't move," she said, her voice smooth, but dangerous. "My children think you're food," she added, stepping between him and them. "But I think you might be hope." Jaren froze. She was beautiful in a wild, otherworldly way, but the sadness in her eyes was heavier than gravity. He could feel it, like cold air settling on his skin. "Who are you?" he asked, trying to stay calm. The woman didn't answer right away. She glanced back at the children and said something in their language. They hissed and walked away, disappearing into the trees. She turned back to him. "I am Kalira," she said. "You are not safe here, I noticed," Jaren muttered. Standing up slowly, his side hurt, probably a broken rib. "What is this place?" "This is where the forgotten live," Kalira replied. "This moon is off limits for both your kind and mine." "Then why are you here?" Jaren asked. Kalira hesitated, then spoke softly. "Because I had nowhere else to go," she motioned. For him to follow, Jaren limped after her, deeper into the forest. Birds with crystal wings flew overhead, and small glowing bugs lit their path. They reached a hidden shelter, half buried in roots and moss. Inside, it was dim and warm, with handmade beds and a soft humming sound from an old machine. "This was my mate's outpost," she said, her voice tight. "He died 2 winters ago." "I'm sorry," Jaren said quietly. Kalira didn't respond, just stared at the small fire burning in the center of the room. She finally looked at him again. "I should turn you in," she said. "The elders will want your head." "That's comforting," Jaren muttered, sitting down carefully. "But I won't," she continued. "You fixed something in them just by being here." "In your kids?" Jaren asked, surprised. Kalira nodded. "They haven't laughed in a year," she said. "They laughed when they saw you fall from the sky." Jaren almost smiled at that. "Glad I could be amusing." Then her expression changed. She sat close, almost too close. "I don't want you just because you're human," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want something more." Jaren blinked, unsure how to respond. "What do you mean?" She looked at the fire, not at him. "My children need a father," she said. "They need a reason to feel safe again." Jaren felt a chill, not from fear, but from something deeper, an emotion he didn't expect out here in the middle of nowhere. Kalira reached out and touched his hand gently. "Stay just for a while," she said. "Let them see what kindness looks like again." Jaren didn't answer right away, but somehow he knew this crash was no accident. It was the beginning of something bigger, something he didn't understand yet. And for the first time in years, he felt needed. He nodded slowly. "I'll stay," he whispered, and Kalira smiled. Not with her lips, but with her soul. Asterisk the last shelter. The alien moon had no dawn. Just a soft glow that brightened the red forest slowly. Jaren woke on a floor of woven grass, the ceiling above pulsing with bioluminescent vines. He didn't dream his body was too tired, and his mind too full of questions. Kalira was already awake, crouched by the fire, slicing a glowing root with a bone knife. Her movements were slow and graceful, but her eyes were heavy with worry. The three children sat near her, whispering in their language, occasionally glancing at Jaren like he was a ghost, or maybe a storybook monster. "Are they scared of me?" he asked quietly, sitting up and wincing from the pain in his ribs. Kalira didn't look at him. "No," she said, "they're not scared. They're watching to see if you're real." Jaren blinked. "I'm not sure I am either," he muttered, rubbing his face. He was stranded on an alien moon, sharing a cave with an alien widow and her strange but curious children. And oddly, he didn't feel like running away. Kalira handed him a cup made from a hollowed shell. It smelled like burnt wood and honey, but it warmed his insides. "You'll need strength," she said. "The elders may come today." Jaren stiffened. "The elders, the ones who'd want me dead?" Kalira nodded, her expression unreadable. "They follow old laws," she said. "Laws written when humans were only myths. Can't say I blame them," Jaren replied. "We've caused our share of messes." Kalira studied him. "You speak like someone who has lost things." Jaren looked away. "I've lost a crew. Friends, a brother," he said quietly, "and maybe a reason to keep flying." There was a pause. One of the children came forward, the smallest, with tiny horns and soft blue skin. He reached out and touched Jaren's injured side, then pulled back quickly. "Pain," he said in broken English. "You are Pain Man." Jaren laughed, despite himself. "Not wrong, little guy." Kalira was surprised. "He spoke your words," she whispered. "They haven't spoken since their father died." Jaren turned serious. "What happened to him?" Kalira lowered her eyes. "He went to speak with the humans after the last skirmish," she said. "He never returned." "I'm sorry," Jaren said. Kalira nodded, but her face stayed cold. "Still, you're here," she said. "Maybe that means something." Outside, a loud crack echoed through the woods. Kalira froze. "They're coming," she said, her voice flat. "The elders." She moved quickly, handing each child a small pouch and pushing them into a side tunnel. Then she turned to Jaren, her hands shaking. "You must hide. They will not listen." "No," Jaren said firmly. "I won't hide. You gave me shelter. I won't let them take that from you." Kalira stared at him like he was insane. "You are not one of us," she said. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," he said, stepping in front of her. "That's why it matters." The cave entrance darkened as 5 tall figures appeared, wearing armor made of bones and crystal. Their eyes glowed like ice, and their hands held long staffs crackling with energy. The leader, an old female with silver tattoos down her neck, stepped forward. "Kalira," she said. "You've broken exile laws." Kalira bowed her head. "I did what I must," she said, "for the children." Then the elder noticed Jaren. Her eyes narrowed like daggers. "You brought a human into our sacred land," she hissed. "That is punishable by death." Jaren stepped forward before Kalira could stop him. "I didn't ask to crash here," he said, "but I've tried to help. Your people are starving, your systems are dying, and your children are silent. I can fix things." The elders murmured, clearly shaken. One of them pointed at him. "You think your machines and ideas can change what centuries of pain have carved?" "No," Jaren said, "but kindness can. Maybe that's something your laws forgot." Lead elder looked at Kalira, then back at Jaren. "You have 1 cycle of moons," she said coldly. "Prove your worth, or we take the human and the children both." They turned and left, shadows melting back into the trees. Kalira dropped to her knees, trembling. "They gave us time," she whispered. "That never happens," Jaren knelt beside her. "Then let's use it," he said. "I'll start fixing the old power unit first. Do you have any spare wires or tech parts?" Kalira looked at him with new eyes that saw more than just a guest. "You're really staying," she said softly. "Yes," Jaren replied, glancing toward the tunnel where the children hid. "I'm not running anymore." And deep in that cold alien shelter, something warm began to grow. Forbidden's healing the cave walls trembled with the hum of new life. Jaren had done it. He repaired the broken generator using scrap from his wrecked shuttle, Kalira's old radio, and a few metal bones from her storage pit. The soft light that flickered through the shelter was weak but steady. For the first time in seasons, the cold didn't bite so hard. Kalira stood near the humming machine, her eyes full of something rare hope. Her children touched the warm stone walls with wonder, their small fingers trailing sparks of curiosity. Jaren sat on the ground, tools scattered around him, sweat clinging to his brow. He looked exhausted, but he smiled like he had just fixed the universe. "You made warmth," said the smallest child, voice filled with awe. "No," Jaren replied gently. "We made it together." Kalira watched silently, her heart full and heavy. Her people had given up long ago, lost in grief and old laws. But here was a human who spoke kindness instead of conquest. A man who could rebuild more than machines. He was repairing something inside her. "Too, you should rest," she told him, walking over with a wrapped bundle of roasted roots. Jaren took it, nodding. "Can't afford to stop too long," he said. "The water purifier is next. If I can get it working, your crops might grow again." Kalira lowered herself beside him, their shoulders almost touching. "You speak of healing as if it's normal," she said softly. "In my world, healing is forbidden." Jaren raised an eyebrow. "Why?" he asked. She looked at the fire, voice low. "Because healing means remembering. And we were taught to forget." Jaren stayed quiet, letting her speak. "My people lost thousands when the war came," she continued. "We locked away our emotions, buried them deep, because they brought pain. Now we survive, but we do not live." Jaren looked at her, really looked. "You're living now," he said. "Your children laugh again, don't they? They speak, they touch, they explore. That's not just survival." Kalira didn't answer, but a tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, ashamed. "We're not supposed to cry," she whispered. "It shows weakness." Jaren reached out, his hand hovering near hers. "Where I come from, it shows you're strong," he said. "Strong enough to feel." Suddenly the shelter trembled. Not from the generator, but from outside. Heavy footsteps approached fast and loud. Kalira stood, grabbing her old spear from the wall. She motioned for the children to hide behind the food crates. Jaren grabbed a wrench and followed her to the entrance, heart pounding. A group of alien warriors burst through the vines, their faces twisted with panic, not rage. "Help us!" one shouted. "The sickness is back. 4 children are down, fever burning through them. They won't survive the night." Kalira hesitated, stunned. "They cast us out," she whispered. "They threatened our lives." Jaren stepped forward, firm and calm. "Doesn't matter," he said. "They need help." Kalira stared at him, torn between duty and pain. Then she turned to the warriors. "Bring the children here," she ordered. "We'll try." The warriors left quickly, and within the hour they returned with 3 small bodies wrapped in moss cloth. One didn't move at all. Jaren knelt beside them, opening his emergency med kit. "I need heat, clean cloth, and boiled water," he said. "Now." Kalira moved fast, lighting extra torches and preparing herbs. Her children watched from a distance, wide-eyed and silent. They had never seen their mother work like this, so focused, so fierce. As the night passed, Jaren fought against time and disease. He used every drop of medicine he had, every human trick he knew. Kalira whispered old chants beside him, her hands glowing faintly as she poured energy into the room. And slowly, One of the sick children opened his eyes. Then another took a weak breath. Only one didn't survive, but two lived, and that was more than anyone expected. The warriors fell to their knees in silence, their eyes full of gratitude and confusion. "You used Forbidden's healing," one of them whispered to Kalira. "You broke the sacred laws." Kalira stood tall, her voice calm and strong. "Then the laws are broken," she said, "because I will not let children die to protect dead rules." Jaren stood beside her, his hands stained but steady. "They didn't die because you remembered how to care," he said. "They lived because you dared to feel again." The warriors left with the children, unsure of what to believe, but before they vanished into the forest, one of them turned back and bowed. Later that night, as silence returned to the shelter, Kalira sat by the fire with Jaren. "You brought light into this place," she said. "Not just power, but real light." Jaren looked into the flames. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "I just reminded you what you already had." Kalira moved closer, her shoulder resting gently against his. "Your kind destroyed so much," she said. "But maybe one of you can help rebuild what we lost." The fire flickered, the wind outside was quiet, and for the first time in years, hope no longer felt forbidden. The tribe's judgment rain fell like silver threads across the alien forest. Each drop shimmered with faint bioluminescence as it touched the leaves. The world looked quiet, peaceful, almost sacred, but inside Kalira's shelter, hearts were pounding. The elders had called a meeting, not just a whisper behind walls, but a public trial. Every warrior, mother, child, and widow had been summoned to the sacred clearing. It was the first gathering of the tribe in many cycles, and it was because of one man, Jaren, the human. Jaren stood outside the shelter, tightening the makeshift belt around his tunic. He had cleaned himself the best he could, trimmed his hair with Kalira's bone blade, but nothing could hide what he was. Not alien, not tribe, not welcome, yet not entirely hated anymore. Kalira stepped beside him, dressed in ceremonial wraps made of root fiber and ash dye. Her children clung to her legs, their eyes worried. "You don't have to go," she whispered. "I can speak for both of us." Jaren shook his head. "No," he said. "This started with me, and I'm going to face them. I don't want your people to think you were forced into this." Kalira looked at him with quiet strength. "Then walk with me," she said, "and let them see we walk together." As they entered the clearing, the tribe parted like mist. Eyes stared, some filled with fear, others with wonder, and a few with hate. The circle of elders stood at the center, cloaked in black feathers and thorns. The same elder who had once ordered Jaren's death now raised her staff to silence the crowd. "Kalira," she called, "you have broken the exile law. You housed an outsider, gave him food, gave him purpose, and worse, let him touch the sick." The crowd murmured loudly. Jaren stepped forward, raising his voice. "I didn't come here to harm anyone," he said. "I crashed, yes, but since then, all I've done is help." The elder pointed a long, bony finger at him. "You healed children," she snapped. "You defied the great silence. You brought emotion back into a land that has bled for generations." Jaren's eyes narrowed. "Then maybe your land has bled long enough," he said firmly. "What good is silence if it means letting your young die without a fight?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kalira stepped beside him, her voice like fire wrapped in silk. "The old laws were meant to protect us," she said, "but now they're killing us. Can't you see it? This human saved lives." When our own people turned away, the smallest of Kalira's children suddenly ran into the center of the circle. He stood beside Jaren and raised his tiny voice. "This man is my day," he said proudly. "He fixed the light, he made warm, and he made my mother smile." The tribe stood in stunned silence. A warrior near the edge stepped forward, her face scarred and hard. She had once led raids against human soldiers. She looked at Jaren, her eyes narrow but no longer cruel. "My sister's son lived because of you," she said slowly. "I do not forget my pain, but I cannot deny my debt." Another Voice rose from the crowd, an old male, blind in one eye. My crops are growing again, he said, after years of rot. That machine you fixed changed my soil. Voices kept rising, more and more. The tide of anger was shifting, but the elder refused to bend. If we accept him, she said coldly, then we open the gate to change, and change destroys culture. No, Jaren said, stepping into the center. Change saves it. Your culture isn't your laws, it's your people. And your people are dying. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, a memory chip from his broken ship. I have data, records of medicine, water treatments, farming tech, he said. I can share it all, help rebuild your strength, your future. But I won't do it from the shadows. Either I'm part of this tribe, or I leave. Kalira held her breath, her fingers tightening around her children's shoulders. The elder glared at him, eyes full of fury and fear. Then she slammed her staff into the earth. You will not be tribe, she said. But you will be trial. Jaren looked confused. What does that mean? He asked. The elder's voice grew louder. You will not be accepted through mercy, she said. You must earn your place through challenge. What kind of challenge? Kalira demanded. The elder smiled thinly. 3 tests, she said. Against body, mind, and spirit. If he survives, he becomes one of us. If he fails, he dies. Jaren stood tall. Then I accept, he said without hesitation. Kalira stared at him, tears burning in her eyes. You're mad, she whispered. No, Jaren replied, looking at her and the children. I've just found something worth fighting for. Nights in the cold. The first test had left bruises beneath Jaren's skin and inside his soul. He had run barefoot through a frozen swamp, hunted by beasts bred for silence and speed. The tribe called them wind teeth, monsters that vanished into the fog like ghosts. But Jaren had survived not because he was the fastest, but because he kept moving. Because every time he stumbled, he pictured Kalira's children, waiting, watching, hoping. Now he sat alone in the shelter's quiet. Shadows. His body wrapped in stitched leaves and dry fur. His hands trembled, not from pain, but from something deeper, confusion. Why was he still here, on a moon filled with strangers and danger? Why did her voice echo in his head when he tried to sleep? The fire cracked softly, and he looked up to see Kalira standing in the entryway. She held a bowl of steaming root broth, her face unreadable. You should rest, she said, setting it beside him. Second test begins at moonrise. Jaren nodded slowly, sipping the bitter broth. I keep thinking I should be angry, he whispered. At your people, at the elders, at this whole messed up planet. But I'm not. Kalira sat beside him, her long cloak brushing his arm. Why? She asked. He didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire until the shapes inside blurred. Because I finally feel like I matter, he said. Not as a soldier or a pilot or a problem solver, but as a person. Kalira's fingers played with the edge of her cloak. I used to lie awake for hours after my mate died, she said softly. Cold beside me, cold inside me. I tried to be strong, for the children, for myself, but the warmth never returned. She turned her face to his, lit by the glow of flames. Until you, she said, almost too quiet to hear. You brought the warmth back. Jaren swallowed hard. Her eyes weren't just beautiful, they were wounded. Strong and full of silent storms. He reached out, uncertain, and touched her hand. She didn't pull away. The others might never accept me, he said, even if I pass their tests. Kalira shook her head slowly. They already see you, she said. You challenged their fear just by breathing. A long pause settled between them. Then Kalira stood and reached behind her, unfastening the clasps of her cloak. Her skin shimmered in the firelight, smooth and silver with soft swirling patterns like stardust. She knelt before him, not as a warrior, not as a widow, but as a woman who had found something worth risking for. I will warm your bed, human, she said, her voice trembling with honesty. Not because I must, she added, but because I want to. My children need a father, she whispered. But I need someone who sees me. Jaren felt 1,000 thoughts crash in his head. He had once been trained to fight aliens, not fall for them. But Kalira wasn't just an alien. She was warmth in a cold world, a fire in endless night. He leaned forward, touched her cheek, and pressed his forehead to hers. I see you, he said. Kalira, not just the warrior. Not just the mother, but the woman. I'm not running anymore. They lay together that night. Not just in skin, but in shared pain, silent healing, and slow, careful peace. Outside the frost thickened, but inside warmth bloomed. Her children, curled in their sleeping nests, stirred once and smiled in their sleep. Sensing the shift, their world too was changing. But peace did not last long. At dawn, warning horns echoed across the forest canopy. Kalira jumped up, spear in hand, her face sharp again. Jaren was already at the doorway, pulling on his boots. A scout rushed into the clearing, breathless and pale. Raiders, she gasped, from the burnt moons. They've returned, and they're armed with pulse fire. Kalira's face darkened. Those are the ones who destroyed our western huts, she growled. They killed without mercy. Not even children were spared. Jaren's fists clenched. I've seen what raiders do, he said, and I've fought worse. We stand, or we burn. But your next trial, Kalira began. Forget the trials, Jaren said. This is the test that matters. Not strength, not wit, he added, but heart. He looked down at her children, hiding in the back of the shelter, wide-eyed and quiet. Then he looked back at Kalira, his voice calm. I'm going to fight for this family, he said. For this tribe, even if they don't want me. Because this moon gave me something. I didn't know I still needed love. Kalira stepped beside him, raising her spear. Then we fight together, she said, and as they marched into the misty light, side by side, the stars above seemed to burn brighter, not because of war, but because something rare had taken root. A bond, sealed not by blood or species, but by the warmth of shared hope on a cold night. Asterisk father of the flame, the sky above burned with streaks of red. The raiders had come like a storm, silent at first, then thunderous. Their ships hovered just beyond the cliffs, black shapes spitting flame and smoke. They had no flags, no mercy, only hunger for destruction. Jaren stood at the edge of the village clearing, his breath fogging in the morning chill. Beside him, Kalira gripped her spear with trembling hands, not from fear, but fury. Behind them, her children crouched beneath the shelter roof, wide-eyed and waiting, and all around them, the tribe had gathered, unsure whether to run or stand. This is your fight too, Jaren said, turning to the warriors. You can wait for the flames to reach your homes, or fight for them now. The elder who once called for his death stepped forward slowly. Her face was lined like cracked stone, but her voice was steady. If we follow you, she said, and we fail, we lose everything. If you don't follow, Jaren said, you lose it anyway. Hope doesn't survive in hiding. She stared at him for a moment longer, then lifted her staff and slammed it into the ground. Then we stand, she said. For the tribe, for the children, the warriors roared. A deep, primal cry that echoed through the trees. The tribe had chosen, and now they would defend their own. Kalira looked at Jaren with something fierce in her eyes. Not love, not gratitude, something bigger. Something ancient. I've never seen them stand like this, she whispered. You gave them more than light. Jaren, you gave them fire. Jaren gave her a quick nod, then turned as the raiders broke through the tree line. Their weapons hummed with energy, slicing through branches like paper. Jaren ducked and rolled as a blast struck the ground near his feet. He threw a flash bomb, stolen from his old crash kit, and blinded 3 of them instantly. Kalira moved like a storm, her spear dancing through the air. She struck down 2 raiders. Before they even saw her coming, her body glowed faintly, lit from within by something the tribe had not seen in generations. Bonfire. The stories had spoken of it, an energy born from fierce love and complete purpose. a flame that ignited only when the soul had something to protect. Jaren had awakened it in her, and now it surged like a tide. He fought beside her, using makeshift weapons and his own instincts. His old training returned in bursts. Duck, pivot, strike, protect. A raider raised a plasma gun at Kalira's back. And Jaren didn't think. He threw himself between them, taking the shot to his side. The force knocked him backward, blood pouring from the wound. He hit the ground hard. The world spinning, colors fading. He could barely breathe, but his eyes found Kalira, and then her children. He tried to stand but collapsed, the pain too much. Kalira screamed not in fear, but in fury. She ran to him, dropped to her knees, cradling his broken body. "No," she whispered, "stay with me, stay with us. I'm not losing you." Her bonfire exploded. A wave of white-blue flame rushing from her skin in all directions. It struck the raiders like a storm, burning through armor and steel. But it did not harm the tribe. It passed over them like wind through grass. It was not fire of destruction, it was fire of protection. When the flames vanished, the battlefield was quiet. The raiders fled, leaving behind their dead and wounded. The tribe stood frozen, stunned, watching the last flickers of energy fade into the sky. Kalira bent over Jaren, her tears falling on his chest. "I don't care what law says," she whispered. "You are one of us. You are Flame Father." His eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. "Is that a compliment?" he managed, his lips barely forming the words. Kalira laughed through her tears. "The highest we can give," she said. "You brought the fire back to a people who had forgotten warmth." The elders knelt beside him, their heads bowed. "We judged you too soon," the elder woman said. "You bled for our young, burned for our future. We owe you our survival." Jaren tried to speak, but his body failed him. Kalira pressed her forehead to his, her hands glowing gently as she began the healing chant, not the old chant of silence, but a new one blended with human words and alien hums. A chant of two worlds becoming one. The fire inside him flickered, but it didn't die. Not while she held him. Not while her children watched with hope in their eyes. He had become more than a visitor, more than a stranger. He had become Flame Father. And even if his body never fully healed, his place was now sealed, not in stone or law, but in the hearts of those who had once feared the warmth of feeling and had now learned to embrace it again. Home was never a place. Snow fell gently over the scarred earth. Where once there had been fire and blood, now there was only peace. The trees of the red forest stood tall again, their glowing leaves humming softly in the breeze. The scars of battle still marked the land, but so did new roots, new homes, and something far older than either, hope. Jaren sat outside the rebuilt shelter, wrapped in woven fur, his side still bandaged but healing. Each breath came easier now, but not just because the wound was closing. It was because the air around him no longer carried danger, it carried laughter. Kalira's children ran past him, chasing glowing beetles and squealing with joy. The youngest stopped, ran back, and hugged Jaren's leg with both arms. "You're still hurt," the child said, peering up at him with glowing eyes. "Just a little." Jaren replied with a smile. "I'll be okay." The elder approached slowly, her staff tapping the earth with rhythm. No longer a judge, no longer a stranger now. A respected voice who had witnessed change. "You have passed every trial," she said, "and many that were never written." Jaren looked up at her, curious. "So what happens now?" he asked. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "You stay," she said simply, "as one of us." From behind her, the tribe began to gather. Mothers with children, warriors with burn marks on their armor, farmers with seeds in their hands. They came not as watchers, not as doubters, but as kin. And each one bowed their head as they passed him, a silent gesture of welcome. Kalira stood a few steps away, her cloak fluttering gently in the breeze. But this time, she didn't walk to him as a warrior or as a leader. She walked to him as a partner, as the woman who had shared both fire and silence with him. She took his hand without a word, her fingers fitting perfectly with his. He looked around at the faces gathered in the clearing, at the children he had protected, the elders who had feared him, the people who had once prayed he'd leave, and now they offered him everything they had, not as a guest, not as an outsider, but as Flamefather, as family. A human ship had arrived earlier that week. Its captain offered Jaren a seat home, a medal, even a promotion for surviving the crash. But Jaren had simply looked back at Kalira's children, one asleep in his old flight jacket, the others clinging to his legs, and said no. He had already arrived home. The captain had tried to reason with him. "You're needed back on Earth," he said. "Your people want answers." Jaren smiled sadly. "Then tell them the answer is love," he said. "Tell them I found it in the last place they'd ever look." As the human ship disappeared into the clouds, Kalira placed her forehead against his. "That was your past," she said softly. "This is your forever," and Jaren believed her. Not because of her words, but because of the fire in her touch, the peace in her presence. She had chosen him not from need but from love, and he had chosen her not from guilt but from truth. Later that night, they all gathered beneath the twin moons. The tribe sat around a great fire, its flame dancing high into the sky. Children sang in 2 languages, old chants blending with earth melodies, laughter mixed with alien drums. And for the first time in living memory, there was no separation, only unity. Jaren looked into the flames, his heart full. Kalira sat beside him, her hand resting on his chest. The children leaned against him, their eyes closing, warm and safe, and all around them, the tribe glowed not with magic, but with something far more powerful, belonging. This moon had once been a place of exile. Now it was home. Not because of walls or fire or survival, but because of the people, and the love that had grown where none was meant to take root. Jaren had found what he never knew he was missing. Not medals, not missions, not a way home, but a reason to stay. Because home, he finally understood, was never a place. It was a hand in yours, a child on your shoulder, and a flame that never fades.